In this lesson we will gain that tiny bit of technical knowledge under our fingers so we can successfully rig and solve our problems later. It is absolutely imperative for you to understand the axis system and the rotations inside Cinema 4D. This lesson can be a little bit boring, but bear with me because I cannot emphasize how crucial this is for you to be able to rig properly. You have a simple polygon, triangle, and what is important to understand in Cinema 4D is that it uses two coordinate systems. One is in regard to object in the relative mode. We will discuss this absolute mode later, and this one is the world mode. What exactly does this mean? Well, in the object mode, and I think it's best to demonstrate that with an object. So let's create a new cube, probably scale it down a bit, say somewhere like here, and move it also 100 units in y direction, just as this polygon. Let me make it editable because primitive objects have their axis locked. You cannot manipulate them, so you can run into troubles and ask yourself, why is it not working? It has to be polygon object. So now, if we take a look at each of these objects separately, they are 100 centimeters from this world center and this triangle also. Watch what happens if I make this triangle a child of this cube. This y value becomes 0. Why? The answer is in object mode. Cinema 4D interprets where is the child object in regard to parent. If it has no parent, it will use the world 0, 0, 0 as a parent. And if you switch this to world mode, you will actually see that 100 centimeters once again, since in this world mode it will tell you the exactly absolute position of that object in 3D space. So this is the kind of absolute position in the space, and this object is in relation to a parent. And if you remember from volume 1, Cinema 4D always calculates object from this axis guy. And this is why I made both of them editable, because you cannot manipulate axis with primitive objects. So let me take this axis tool and move it just a bit, and watch this z value here. You see it changed. The actual object did not move. You can clearly see that Cinema 4D calculates the object from the axis, and that is an rule. Let me undo that and go back to my object tool, and I will move this triangle, let's say 100 centimeters in this direction also. So you can see it now only states that this triangle is 100 centimeters from its parent object, and in world mode it's actually 100 centimeters from here in x and also in y. I hope this is not too difficult to understand. This becomes a little bit more complicated when we are dealing with rotations. So let's rotate our object, let's say 30 degrees in this pitch axis. You can see which axis you are using here. And you can see the object revolves around its own system, and you can force the world system, the world orientation, with this guy or by pressing W, and you clearly see the axis has changed. And by pressing it again, you are back in object mode. So let's zero that out. That is very useful. Also, what is very, very, very important to understand is that Cinema 4D will use only z-axis in the object mode. If the object has a parent, for any rotations, it will use parent's orientation and rotation. If it has no parent, it will use the world system for heading and pitch rotations. Okay? So bank rotations always revolve around object's z-axis. Hope I haven't lost anyone. I will just demonstrate that briefly. So I will temporarily pull out this of hierarchy, and I will rotate this object somewhat arbitrarily to some crazy position and put that triangle back as a child. So let's do a test now. Let's say we want to animate our object, so maybe in this direction. I will go here at the start of my timeline and press F9, which will add a keyframe, and go to, let's say, frame 30. I'll rotate this for 90 degrees and press F9 to create a new keyframe. Let's play our little animation and see what we got. And something is bad, you can see that. You can see how object tilts. And the reason for it is problems with rotations. It uses these parents rotations for heading and pitch that will actually animate both differently. So watch now if I select my polygon object and scrub time. Look how those values change. Look at them here. That is completely insane. And you have to be aware of that. The only axis that you can rotate without a problem, let me demonstrate that. We'll delete these keys here, is the z-axis. So let's do a keyframe here, so F9, and we will scrub time. And let's rotate here on the z-axis. Let's do the same thing, 90 degrees, and add a keyframe. And watch now, the animation is clean. So this z-axis is the safe axis. Be aware of that. That is very important to understand. So z always, let's say, works for itself, and for other two guys, this red guy and green guy, it will always use the parent object, its rotations, or if it has no parent, it will use the world as its parent. Let me delete those keyframes. And this behavior can go in such extent, it can actually do something that is called a gimbal lock, when two of these axes match, when they find themselves in the same plane. That is a horrible thing if you're animating. Let's go here in the object relative mode, and now you can see we have some sort of rotations here. And what if you want to animate something? These values are very, very bad. You want to have clean values, preferably 0. But you also want to keep those values also, since you want to know how your object is positioned and rotated in regards to this parent object. And you can do just that with this freeze transformations guide. It is really useful. So if I hit freeze all here, I will get 0 values here, and Cinema 4D will store those original values for me, so I can freely work with clean numbers. I can also avoid the problems I've had. I can now freely add a keyframe, crop to, let's say, 30 frames, rotate this guy 90 degrees, do another keyframe, and I will not have that wobble again. So use this. After you are finished, you can unfreeze all and work with those exact the same values. And remember, z-axis is your friend. No matter how object is oriented, no matter where it points, it will always work perfectly around this z-axis. And you can see that only this bank rotation is changing. Try with other axes, try, and you will see all the values are changing. Also for this green guy. So Z guy is the safe guy. We like the Z guy. Also, to prevent gimbal lock, there is one feature inside Cinema 4D, but we will discuss this later. The one thing that I want to mention now is this object absolute mode. So if you have freezed your transformations or rotations, you can see the values before transformation in this absolute mode. So once again, this is with freezed transformations, this is world mode, in relation to world, and this is the value without freeze transformations, even if they are on. I hope I haven't lost anyone with this lesson, and hopefully you gained some insight in how Cine 4D works with rotation.